Awesome. Okay, as mentioned, this session will be recorded, so you will receive the recording shortly afterwards. Along with it, we will send a brief questionnaire. Your feedback is very valuable to us, so we'd appreciate it if you could take out a couple of minutes to get that completed for us. Feel free to use the chat feature to ask any questions that may come to mind during the session. At the end here, we do have a dedicated Q&A portion. If you'd like to come off mute at that time to ask your question, just simply raise your hand, or feel free to continue to use the chat feature, and I or Hank will go ahead and facilitate those out. We also like to encourage you to register for the upcoming sessions for Career Quest as well. And with that, we can go ahead and start with some introductions. So hello and welcome in everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today from wherever you are. My name is Hong Nguyen, and I'm a part of the Careers and Professional Development team, specifically in employer relations here at WGU, where we get great employers connected with our students and alumni. And we are very excited for today's session on Recruiting 101. And I'd like to introduce our presenter for today, Aaron Ward, who is with Emerson, and he leads the recruiting efforts in co-ops, internships, and university relationships. In today's session, Aaron will share some valuable insight on how to build meaningful relationships with recruiters. And with that, Aaron, I'd like to go ahead and pass it over to you.
Fantastic. Thank you. I really appreciate it. And everybody that's able to join us. Yeah, we're going to cover some basic recruiting stuff. I'll first of all do a company overview real quick too on one of my slides just to give you an idea of what Emerson is. That way you'll know kind of a background there as well. Okay, so we'll get started here then. So recruiting 101. The introduction's already kind of was done, so we'll kind of skip that part. So Emerson as a whole, I want to just give out some random facts about Emerson. Emerson is a global company, okay? So we're worldwide. We have 130 manufacturing locations all across the globe. We manufacture parts for all sorts of different industries, such as oil, gas, nuclear, as well as food industry, paper. Practically any industry you can think about it, we have parts made and manufactured for them. Last year in global sales, we made 17 billion. To give you an idea, we are a Fortune 500 company, so we are exchanged on the New York Stock Exchange. We were founded back in 1890, so well over 100 years around, to give you an idea. Our headquarters is in St. Louis. My location specifically, though, is in Marshalltown, Iowa, so I represent that section of Emerson as a whole. Another interesting fact would be 65% of all electric vehicles that are manufactured in the are manufactured with our parts, our solutions, Emerson's. So that's kind of a neat little fact there as well. So those are some basic information on Emerson to give you an idea of how global we are. One thing I always tell people is if you ever want to, have the opportunity to live in different parts of the United States or possibly live in the different parts of the world, I'm just gonna have a lot of locations all over, including, Europe. So you got like France, Italy, you got Germany, you got China, Singapore, South America, Mexico, Africa, kind of all over. But we'll get onto the actual recruiting stuff. So for recruiting, what I always tell people is you got to know what you are looking for, the individual, because this really helps the recruiter. So this little quote here, know thyself, you'll understand any reflections or any encounters pretty much. So basically, this is basically pointing out where if you know what you want, it makes the recruiter's jobs easier. Because if you come up to the recruiter and you want a position at this company in this department, that just makes our job easier of pointing out where to put you. So first of all, know what you want. It helps us have an understanding of the job duties and responsibilities. So when you come up to a recruiter and you already know the job functions and what your day-to-day would be, because a lot of this you can look up online and already know well in advance, especially if the job's posted. You'll have a job description where if you already read through that, you already have a lot of those questions that a lot of people would normally ask us already answered. So you're skipping a step that makes our job slightly more easier and streamlined. Company culture. You want to make sure whatever company you are trying to gravitate towards, you know their culture. Because if you don't look up the culture, it might not match up with you. So even if, let's say, you get the job, a year later, you could be like, I just really do not like this role because my values don't line up with the company values. So you want to make sure their goals and the things that they push are the same goals and kind of the same values you have inside too. Geographical region, you want to make sure you are aware of this because maybe you want to live in a city that the company's not located in. So that either means you have to move or you have to find a remote position potentially. So you want to be aware of that depending on what company you want to work for. So geographical region is a big thing to keep in mind, and that's why I always push for how global we are. Gives you more options compared to some companies that are only a handful of locations. Okay. Make a connection. So one thing I always tell people is make a good first impression is key. So this is where, I know most people have already had this through either whether it's high school or in college, there's usually some sort of courses or part of coursework which might bring up, hey, make good eye contact, shake their hand firmly, basic stuff like that. But it is important because people, the 8-second rule basically comes into effect. Within the first 8 seconds of meeting somebody, you already make a judgment call of them. And I know a lot of us say, well, that's bad. You shouldn't judge a book by its cover. But it's a way to make sure that you're able to make things simpler in terms of decision making. That's why the human brain works that way. So to take advantage of that is dress appropriately, make good eye contact, speak with conviction because you know what you want out of this position. These are simple things that if you know this is how it works, you're able to prepare for it and be a better candidate. Like I said, dress appropriately, prep successfully. So preparation is everything. So if you want to do good approaching that recruiter, practice it. I know a lot of people think, well, that's silly, but if you don't practice shaking somebody's hand, looking them in the eye, and introducing yourself, even having an elevator pitch, you're not going to be prepped or ready for it. So practice with your friends, practice with your family. You could even practice with really strangers, even if you really want to. It'd be a little awkward. You might want to explain that, but really it's just getting the butterflies out of your stomach so you're not nervous as much coming up to that recruiter. So that way you're more successful with the way you present yourself to everybody. So that's a big thing to keep in mind there. So there is an acronym that I use for recruiting that I learned at my previous employment. It's finding smiles. So this is a good way to kind of keep track of how to be a standout candidate or for recruiting purposes too. This is what we use. So S start a conversation. So that's simple, but it's important. You want to ask open and closed questions to make connections and identify applicants' needs. That's what we do. So we want to make sure right away we're asking questions, finding out this candidate approached us. Let's find out what they're looking for so that we can best fill that position or find a matchup with them. Or if we can't find a match, we just simply let them know, hey, we don't have anything that matches up with you with your degree path or something like that. So that way it just saves everybody's time. So open questions, for example, requires a free response. Where do you see yourself in 2 years? That's very broad, but that's going to give us an idea of where you see yourself, what you're trying to do. That way we can kind of match it up. Closed questions requires simply a yes or no response. Are you interested in hiring or hearing more about Emerson? So this is simple, if they're not interested, I'll let them move on. If they are, I'll talk about Emerson and give them the whole spiel of what Emerson's about, what we have to offer, and whether it's a good match. M is simply make a connection with the applicant. So once we start that conversation, that's great, but we want to make a connection with them so that way they feel comfortable, and that way we can kind of drive the conversation where it needs to go. So find likes, things you and the applicant can talk about. This is one thing I always do the simple once over. So you look them over real quick and go, hey, they have shoes. You might point that out. If their shoes look nice or are fancy in some way, they might be a shoe person. Or maybe they have a t-shirt on that has, hopefully you're a little more dressed up for this, but sometimes at a job fair they're not. And they have a t-shirt that's a rock band. Well, maybe that's your favorite rock band. You can make a connection there. Or maybe they have something in their hair or are wearing glasses or something. It's a simple thing that you're generally like, oh, I know that. I like that type of thing. And you're just talking about that a little bit. Is the applicant looking for other opportunities? Yeah, you want to keep it open and make sure that if they are open to other opportunities, you can talk to them about that. Or if they're not, it's okay to move on. So I's for identifying the candidate's needs. This is where you want to put yourself in the shoes of the applicant and answer the following questions. So really you want to make sure you're understanding where they're coming from. You're not trying to be pushy. A lot of recruiters, they try to be pushy, and at the end of the day, that's not going to yield the result you want. You need to be there for the applicant. You're the advocate for them. You're trying to help them find what they want. That's what a really good recruiter is. You're not trying to persuade them to do something they don't want to do. You're ultimately there because they want to be there. And that's what makes a good recruiter from a bad recruiter. What is the value you expect to receive from working for Emerson? That's a big thing. What are they expecting? Salary, this could be how much they want to start. This could be how much they want to make 10 years from now. It could be the benefits they're looking for. It really depends on the applicant. Maybe they want to start with an entry level position, but they would also like their schooling paid for their MBA. Well, that's something that you can match up with the company and their values. What are you looking for a new job, or why are you looking for a job in general? This is important because maybe their current employer that they're at, there could be red flags that we need to keep an eye out for because it goes both ways. Maybe their current employer they're bashing. This is something that we keep an eye out for. That's a bad sign for a recruiter. So keep that in mind when you're talking to a recruiter. You never want to bash your former employer because they're going to keep a note of that and realize if they did that to their current employer right now, what are they going to do when we hire them on and it gets to be a year or 2 years later and maybe their manager maybe butts heads with them? Well, they might also vet their frustrations to the community or online and things like that. So that's something we keep an eye out for too. So keep that in mind when you're talking to a recruiter. Um, L's for link candidates' needs with Emerson's features, benefits, things like that. So once you have those candidate needs, you want to link that up with what the company has. So what features, benefits satisfies the applicant's needs. Again, that could be like your 401k, it could be tuition reimbursement. It really can be all sorts of different things depending on what the applicant wants with their role. It could be travel, maybe they want travel or less travel. Only discuss relevant features or benefits. This is important because you don't want to discuss things that they don't care about. So a young applicant might not care as much about a 401k, and that's okay, but they might care more about the pay. So you have to focus on that. Talk about Emerson's exclusive benefits. Every company usually has a few things that are unique to them, and those are the things you want to focus on differentiating yourself compared to other companies. Because if you just focus on the exact same things as all the other companies do, it doesn't really make you stand out. It doesn't really make you, a company that they want to go to. You want to make sure that you stand out in some capacity. Explore opportunities for positions at Emerson. So this is where you want to open up what positions you have. The recruiter has to make sure that they are aware of what they have. If they aren't aware of the position lineup, how can they link that up with the candidate? So they have to know that. And then if you're the candidate, if you already know the position you want that's posted, it saves the recruiter time because it's like, oh, I know that that position's open. You know it's open. Let's just have you apply and get the ball rolling. It saves a lot more time when you know what you want, like I said earlier. What would they like to do with Emerson? Yep, that's the simple basic thing. This is where we ask, what department, For college students, it's a little bit easier at a job fair because usually they hand you their resume and I can read, oh, okay, it's a software engineer or it's a mechanical engineer or accounting major or something like that. That helps differentiate it, but sometimes I've seen engineers that want to try more of the business route and then we get them lined up for maybe a technical marketing role or maybe a supply chain technical side role. And the reason for that is because they'd like to learn the business side too, because maybe they already had an internship or co-op already doing the technical stuff, and they'd like to understand the business, because that's a good matchup for an engineer to have both of those skills. What skills do they have? You look at that as well. One big thing I see for any employer when I talk to other employers at some of the panels that we have at some of the local universities, a lot of employers, us included, we look for do they have job related experience? And I know this is hard to get when you're in a university or at a school, but if you have more work experience, that's how we usually pick you, or more technical skills. Like we've picked engineers just because they've had soldering experience, even though it's not very common for us to use in our department for electrical engineer. We picked them just because there was a project in the pipeline, and we knew that having that skill to know how to solder a little bit could help with some of our prototype stuff. So sometimes having those hands-on abilities really helps for us to differentiate between candidates because when everybody has the same degree, it's really what have you done with that degree that matters. So that can help a lot. And I know for interns and or people that are in college right now, that's hard to get that experience. Just try to do as many internships as you can and co-ops. That way, when you do graduate, it just opens up more opportunities for you. And then if you're just a adult student, perfect. You have probably more experience than most people just because you've been out there. What pay rate, or are you looking for? This is big just because if A lot of times, if someone asks a crazy number, we already know right off the bat, hey, we're going to shoot it to you straight. We don't usually negotiate a whole lot. It's usually the offer is, it is what it is. Just because we're pretty straightforward with that. We're going to give you a good, solid offer. Every year we do wage analysis with the universities as well as different third-party organizations to stay competitive in our industry. So we know it's a good offer. It's not like we're lowballing people. We want to make sure we have a good offer because we want great people within our organization. It's just we don't like to have that back and forth as much. So, but know the pay rates, have an idea. At least a range is good. Usually, a recruiter likes to know, okay, I need 50 to 60 or 60 to 70. That gives us a range to work with and kind of go from there. So S, summarize and set up next step. So once you've made those connections, you build the rapport, you know what they want, you know what you want in the candidate. You make the closing statement and you set up the next step for them. So this could be as simple as, hey, I think you could be a good fit for this for Emerson. I would like to, have you apply online and then simply set up a time for an interview. If you're in person, we do this a lot of times at career fairs. We have next day interviews, so we can set them up right there and be like, hey, are you available, Thursday at 4 p.m. simply. And then we get it set up right there. Now, obviously, once you apply online and it's over the phone, it's a little bit more back and forth there. But at career fairs, it's very common for us to do that just to get the ball rolling and keep them kind of interested, if that makes sense. And then the follow-up. This is huge, this can differentiate you from other candidates too, After the initial connection or interview, send a thank you, to recruiters or interviewers. I know that's kind of cliche. They always say, hey, do a handwritten note or things like that. I always tell people do one step above that. And simply you can call them. If you call the recruiter, that's a big difference. Most people don't like calling people, all right? But if you're used to calling people and you get good at calling people, that initially, first of all, it's quicker than a letter, and also just means a little bit more, especially if you remember something. I always tell people if you had a great conversation about a rock band or something when you initially started your conversation, and then when you come back to call for that follow-up thank you call, obviously you thank them and everything, but you always could be ask some random question about the rock band or something that kind of make them remember you. Hey, that was that guy, because we remember like how people make us feel. So if you make them feel positive, upbeat, you're going to remember that person. So that's a key thing to keep in mind. It's an easy way to do it. Even texting too, the more communication I think the better is in general with the recruiter because most candidates we work with don't have a whole lot of communication. So if you're the one that has more communication and positive communication, you're probably just going to stand out just by the volume of communication. So keep that in mind. Maybe not text every day, but texting every now and then isn't a bad thing, checking in and things like that. So kind of overall summary of what we kind of went over. So we have the introduction, basic info on Emerson, kind of what Emerson's about as a whole. What are you looking for? Know yourself is a big thing, know what you want within your career path and where you want to be in the next 5 to 10 years in that company. Make a connection, build that relationship between you and the recruiter and the hiring managers, build that connection. Smiles, that's the acronym that we use to reverse engineer what recruiters do. That's what we do. So it kind of gives you an idea there. Follow up, stay in contact. You want to make sure that you're staying connected with the recruiter throughout the whole process as well. And then obviously we'll move on to questions here in just a minute. I just want to real quick cover some positions we do have. So we do have 2 positions open available at our Marshalltown location. They are co-op positions. So co-op basically means that it will start, they start on May 13th for these 2 positions, and you'll go to just December. One unique thing about Emerson, we prefer co-ops because it's a way for us to kind of test the waters to see if these individuals are good full-time employees. That's why we do the co-op compared to an internship, because 8 months, it's pretty hard for you to kind of put on the show for that long. For an internship, you might be able to keep put on the show for showing up on time and being a good employee for 3 months. But 8 months, any of the red flags will pop up. And then that way we can make a job offer later down the road once you graduate. That's usually why we like to do those types of things. But if you guys have questions or if you just simply want to have my contact info, here's my Emerson email. This is my work cell as well. Feel free to text or call. I like to answer questions about anything really about Emerson, about recruiting, anything at all in your career. I love to connect. I also am on LinkedIn as well to search my name and pop up, and I wouldn't mind connecting that way as well. But if you have questions, feel free to go ahead and put it in the chat, or if you have already, we can start answering them.
Awesome. Thank you, Erin, for that great information. We do have a couple of questions in the chat already. And then if anyone on the call would like to come off mute, feel free to raise your hand. I'll go ahead and allow attendees to unmute. So feel free to use a chat or ask your questions directly. We do have a question here from Christine. She states, this may be difficult. It may show you can't stay focused if you change the subject off the interview. How would you go about finding a way to bring up a personal connection during the interview process?
One that I always use, okay, pro tip here. When you're in the interview, just simply ask, hey, how did you get started with the company? Or what are your passions about the company and your role? This way, you kind of see their passions and why they picked their role. And that can open up a whole floodgate of different information on their background, whether it was the schooling they had, or kind of maybe even early areas of how they got down the path of that particular career path. So that's what I would ask. I would just simply ask, how did you find yourself in this role and what makes you passionate about it?
Awesome. Thank you. Great question. Any other questions? Please feel free to go ahead and come off mute or use the chat here. Um, One question that comes to mind, Erin, if you don't mind sharing, what is
Yeah.
the top thing you truly enjoy about working for Emerson?
Yeah, the thing that I enjoy about working for Emerson is the people. I always look for any employer that I work for, um, your coworkers. If you don't like your coworkers, you're not gonna like going to work. So make sure the people you work around, they're great people. And as long as they're great, you're gonna do great in your career path, I think. Plus, I like recruiting too because people as well. I just like working with people.
Yep, yep, perfect. Another question here, do you have mentorship programs for new hires?
Yeah, we do actually have mentorships for new hires and co-ops. So that's something where we can help mentor you throughout your career. And we even put on sometimes webinars, like we did one last week for women in STEM. So it was women leadership. Did a webinar kind of like this where they went over some questions that was popular for universities of how they got to their career path or what challenges they face and things like that. So yeah, there's all sorts of different opportunities for mentorship as well as just webinars you can join.
Awesome, very cool. Do you have opportunities that are remote uh, or just all across the different sites that you have?
Yeah. So it kind of depends on the role. Some are completely remote. Actually, some of the recruiting positions, they're completely remote. And then there's some that obviously have to be in the office. Mine is I have to be in the office at least 3 days a week, but I get 2 days where I can work from home. I usually come in the office just because kind of like to interact with my coworkers and things like that. But again, it's fully up to you and what department you're in. A lot more of the, um, I guess, analytics side of stuff you could do fully remote, and it's more like the engineering technical roles. Some of those have to be here all the time because you have to use machines and things like that. So it just
Mm,
depends on the role that you're in.
okay, yeah. Um, I know with the topic of recruiting, there's been a lot of questions regarding AI and kind of the use of that.
Yeah.
So for Emerson in specific, do you guys use AI to review resumes, or do you actually have a person that reviews all resumes and applications that come through?
Yeah. Um, First of all, obviously the questions that you have help screen you in or out to some degree. So that is one process there. And then for us, we do have people manually look at them. Now, we don't look at all of them because there's a rule of thumb. As long as you don't open up the resume, you don't have to. So usually, if the first 10 you open are all good, we'll interview them, and then we won't look at anybody else until we finish interviewing if we need to.
Mm,
Just so if you have 100 applicants, because we get a lot of applicants usually for most of our roles, you just don't have time to look through like 400 applicants or 200, So as long as you don't open up their application, you technically don't have to um, move forward or not. It's just kind of like one of those things, you found a qualified applicant in the first 10, 20, 50, or whatever. So, But no, Emerson's all about automation too, so I feel like they're going to move to automating that more,
Oh,
just because we have a whole department that automates any function throughout the company as long as you bring it up to them. Bring up the
mhm.
work order, they figure out a way to automate it. So that's probably something in the works to automate just because it makes sense.
Okay, awesome. Let's see here, a couple more questions. We have a question, or yeah, a question from Art. It says, "Hi, Aaron. Thank you for the helpful advice. Could you please tell me which part of Africa Emerson is located in?"
Good question. I'm not familiar which part. I'd have to check. I just don't work with that region, but I know we are in Africa. It's
Very
a
cool.
relatively new region.
Oh,
It's a smaller one compared to the other ones. There's only a few sites there. So it is relatively new. But yeah, off the top of my head, I don't know. Sorry about that.
yeah, that's okay. That's great to know. I'm sure there'll be information on your guys' website on that as well. So you guys can definitely check that out. We have a couple questions here regarding cover letters.
Mhm.
Do recruiters actually read all cover letters, or would you recommend not using cover letters? The statement is that AI is not adequate yet for discerning cover letters, and they generally tend to automatically reject your application if a cover letter is included.
Yeah, what I would tell you is, yeah, just don't include cover letters. Every major employer that I work with in the Midwest, they don't read them, and I'll be honest with you, I don't read them either. Just because we look for the skills we need, and a cover letter, it really wastes time because you're re-explaining the same information that's in your resume.
Mhm.
So don't even bother with the cover letter. The only time you'd want to use cover letter if you're in a higher level position. So entry level, don't bother. But if you're, let's say, going for a director level up, I would use a cover letter.
Yeah.
But entry level, manager, probably not. But anything director level up, yes, cover
Mm.
letter.
Okay, perfect. Great insight. Let's see here. Any other questions you guys may have? I did drop Aaron's LinkedIn in the chat as well. I hope that's okay.
Yeah,
So you're
perfect.
more than welcome to go ahead and connect with him on LinkedIn. Let's see. I think we have a question here from Mona Lisa about your resume. If you're looking for resume review, our careers
Yeah,
and professional development team also does review that. Erin, if she asked if she could send the resume over to you, I think from just kind of a review side, Erin will
yeah.
be able to look at it, but any official application or for consideration, you'll want to make sure you apply through their careers site.
Yep, you're correct.
Yes, perfect. We do have another one here from Kelly. What other roles do you recruit for besides the two co-ops you mentioned? So maybe
Yeah.
can you share some of the positions that Emerson generally recruits for?
Yeah, so for my position, I'll recruit for first of all, I'll cover mine, then I'll cover Emerson as a whole. For my position, anywhere from 35 to 40 co-ops a year we hire. So that's my primary focus. And then a secondary function is I help some of the other interns or co-ops at other locations when they request help. So like Mansfield, I helped with two of their location co-ops. So and that's Mansfield, Massachusetts. I helped them real quick. And then also I'll help with occasionally one-offs for entry level positions. So if they have an entry level like accountant or things like that, I'll help funnel applicants that way too. But Emerson as a whole, really, it's big engineering. That's our huge focus is engineering focus. And then it would be a lot of business majors and things like that. Those are the big ones I would think. I'm trying to think of any other areas. Mainly, yeah, engineering and then business field really is our focus for what we look for and recruit for.
Awesome. Okay, great. Another question here. Is there a age cutoff for internships and co-ops?
I mean, basically for our internships and co-ops, it's all college age students. So it's as long as you're enrolled in a university, it's fine. For the most part there. That's the big thing. We do actually do have like a high school program here in town where we select, I think, one or two high schoolers every year that do like a kind of like a internship slash like I guess job shadow with the manufacturing plant, but that's a little bit different.
Awesome, awesome. Let's see here. Couple more questions. Is it wise to tailor your resume for each job or company you submit to?
Yes and no. And here's where it is. It's great that you tailor your resume for that company, and I think that's the best way to go. Now, the con to that is if you forget that you tailored it to that company or university, it's going to look bad to all the other ones you apply to. So if you are going to apply to 100 different jobs, it's probably pretty tedious to tailor it. But if you know a certain job that you really want, you probably should tailor it for that one. You just don't want to forget that you tailored it and then send it to 100 different companies so they're like, hey, it doesn't match up, you know? So just be
Right.
careful there.
Awesome. I agree with that as well. Let's see here. Are there any programs for new grads that are similar to co-ops?
Yeah, for new grads, I would say a lot of our entry level positions are very similar to co-ops. Also, we do offer internships at other locations. So maybe you just want an internship. There would be internship locations up in like Shakopee, Minnesota, as well as like in Texas and things like that. They do more internships. So we do have internships in Emerson. Just at our location, we prefer the co-ops because we've had really great experience from it because a lot of our higher level staff all came from co-ops. They
Mm,
just kind of worked their way up.
yeah,
Also with co-ops, once you do one co-op with us, oftentimes if you're a fantastic worker and a good match, we'll offer you an internship the following summer and keep you on kind of the staff and then offer you full time once we have a position available or when you graduate.
awesome. Very cool. All right. Any other questions? Anyone like to come off mute or feel free to continue to use the chat feature? Let's see. I don't think we have any other new ones here. Okay, yeah. Thank you, Erin, for the great information. I know with Emerson, sometimes people look at engineering companies and they think just
Mhm.
maybe engineering jobs, but I know with any business, it's going to be a full-blown,
Oh yeah.
accounting team, marketing, IT, business, like you mentioned. So I would highly encourage if you guys are interested, feel free to visit their careers webpage. They have all of their current openings posted on there. A lot of great questions today about resume and cover letters. Just as a reminder, our careers and professional development team can definitely help with that. And then feel free to connect with Erin. That's very gracious of you to share your contact and be willing to connect with our students here. So if there are no other additional questions, we can go ahead and kind of wrap up here again. Can you send out the LinkedIn? Yes, we will reshare Erin's LinkedIn here.
And I appreciate
Okay.
everybody taking time out of their day just to hear me talk about something I'm passionate about. I really do
Yeah.
appreciate that.
Yes, this was awesome. Just a reminder, this session will be sent out via recording along with the survey, and we'd really appreciate if you could take a moment to complete that. And then just again, a huge thank you, Erin, for your time and valuable insight you shared today on Recruiting 101 and all the great and innovative things happening with Emerson. Thank you everyone for joining and for your great discussion questions and engagement. We'll send this recording out along with Emerson's webpage again. Don't forget to keep an eye out for future Career Quest sessions. And then just wishing everyone a fantastic rest of your day. And thank you again for joining. Thanks, Erin.
Thank you. You have a wonderful day.
Yep, you as well. Take care.